Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story TV and the Her Story podcast. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Wellington, New Zealand. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hello, my name is Dr. Marta Pazos, and even though I am originally from Spain, I currently live in Atlanta, Georgia, which is in the beautiful southeast of the United States. I came to the US a little over 20 years ago, actually, with a Fulbright scholar to get my PhD. I am a chemist, and I got my PhD in polymer science. And after I finished my PhD, I started working on adhesives and coatings. I didn't really like it all that much. In fact, I still remember when I was in grad school how drawn I always had been to the consumer products industry, in particular the cosmetics industry. So after I spent a couple of years, which were really lovely for my development in my career, making, synthesizing, and curing adhesives that were UV curable, I left for the very well-known company, Procter and Gamble, and I actually moved from Ohio to Boston in Massachusetts, and I started working in Gillette, which back then was already part of the Procter and Gamble company. I had a phenomenal time doing coatings, decorations for razors. I understood so much better the consumer, both the male and female consumer, and what attracts them, what makes them do a purchase, right? What makes them buy something on top of something else. And I was grateful and very, very lucky to have a phenomenal sponsor that actually, when I went to him and asked him to move me, I had already been promoted. So I asked him to move me to a different business, to a different group within the company. He actually asked me if I wanted to take the leap to move to Asia. So a few months later, I was actually moving to Japan, where I did a short period to learn about the job. And the job was my dream come true. It was finally being in cosmetics. I was actually part of the SK2 team. SK2 is a very high-end brand for skincare and also cosmetics. It also has color cosmetics. And then I moved to Singapore, which is where my assignment was going to be based. In the following 4 years, I learned everything that I could about formulation of cosmetics, packaging choices, what makes the consumer make a purchase over another one, particularly one with a pretty big spending power. SK2 is a pretty expensive brand. And also, but what I absolutely loved the most about it was how incredible the science and the care of the skin are developed in the Far East. There is really like the one thing that moves east, from east to west, right? Like how well they take care of their skin. In a few years, I actually got an assignment in London to work on cosmetics and skincare for the fashion houses that Procter & Gamble was licensing to. And then a few in a bit, somebody that was my vice president when I was at Gillette approached me and offered me to come to Estee Lauder in New York, which of course I said yes. I absolutely love the work. Unfortunately, the job was not all I was expecting. I didn't find the company to be to be favored to women in general, which I know it may sound a little weird, as Estee Lauder is a company mostly for women. And but in particularly with the management that I had, which I happened to eventually getting so much, I wouldn't say trouble, but so much disagreements with, that I found that I needed to leave. At that time, I was actually also already consulting for the US Army. And I realized that there is one thing that is true: no matter what you do, science is science, and chemistry is fundamentally the same, no matter what field you're applying it to. So I got a little bit of that experience of the consulting world, and I really liked it. And I realized that I wanted to start my business, but my bank account was not exactly all that full to just walk away from a good paying job and starting my own shop. So I took a job to come to Atlanta to work for the Coca-Cola company, and which I thought would allow me to create that safety net that I needed, since I had been having a lot of fun in a lot of very expensive cities, and also to gather experience in an industry where I had none, which was packaging for food and beverage. And my experience in Coca-Cola was even worse than I did in Estee Lauder. And at some point, the pandemic hit, and I felt that I was lost. I didn't like what I was doing at all. I always find a way to love the science, to love the work, but the job was driving me literally insane. So, and I remember that there was one time when I had to come out of the rut that I was getting myself into. The pandemic hits. I am going through a divorce. I am alone, well, with my cats in Atlanta, and I really do not like what I do, and I do not like my life. And I remember one time I was watching television until who knows the 4 or 5 in the morning, and I realized that I hadn't showered in a very long time. I realized because I could smell myself. So the day after, I came to the conclusion that something had to give, and I had to change what I was doing. I was not having a routine. I was really drinking a bit much. I was not feeling good at all with myself. So I started making formulas in my kitchen, which is something that I had already been familiar with, because when I was working at Estee Lauder, I had burned myself, and I learned how to make a product that is supposed to be really good for burns. So I created what everybody was doing at that time, a hand sanitizer, but this one was actually emulsified, and it felt like a lotion, not like one of those astringent and very drying sanitizing products that were floating in the market. And then I created some other products, and I started doing what any entrepreneur would do. I started creating, reaching out to those connections to introduce me to fillers, to packaging companies, to interested parties. And I stumbled upon this group of men that were creating their cosmetic company at that time. And they themselves realized how much they needed somebody with formulation background that was also a woman. And the day that I realized that I needed to change my life and walk away from corporate, I had a terrible panic attack. And luckily, that was kind of like the inflection point of yes, life is going to be different from now on. I am part of that company called Rejuvalift, which sells already 2 products. Very proud of those 2 products that are already in the market. And I also have a great contract with the Department of Defense, which I regained after I also had that panic attack that took me into the realization that something needed to be changed. And I have to say that owning my own company has been one of the greatest professional things that I can now talk about. I don't necessarily love the fact that I spend a lot more time outside of my home, so I travel quite a lot, but I absolutely love the flexibility, the schedules. I unfortunately have never been a very disciplined woman, and that is not necessarily have to be a bad thing. I believe that as long as you know when to do the work, when to produce work, and when to follow what you need to get done, I think it's good. I know that a lot of entrepreneurs swear on the discipline book, but I may be a little different. And maybe at some point I'm going to have to change that. But so far it's going really well. I also formulate for third parties, so I am very happy to do that for anyone that comes to me, because at the end of the day I tell people that most of the formulations for skincare, and probably for other products out there too, but the ones that I know is skincare, are made by few companies that formulate for the same for different brands, and by the power of marketing really positions them differently in the market, but the product itself may not necessarily have to be any different. So, and I am so glad to be part of her story, for to be part of the tribe, as you called it.
Wow, what an amazing journey you've been on. My goodness. So many ups and downs.
Yes.
Now, if I could take you back to have a conversation with that younger woman who was going through a divorce, is not happy with her job, in a foreign country, needing to start all over again, if you could give her three nuggets of wisdom, three pieces of advice, what would you have wanted somebody to have said to you at that time?
One of the first things that I tell everybody, especially younger women, I love coaching younger women. I have little sisters, but they are my half sisters, but they are much younger than me. I am 47 and they are 20 and 19. So they could actually be my daughters. And in fact, their mom is my age. So what I always tell people, and what I wish that somebody had told me, is what you're doing right now is not necessarily going to be what you're going to be doing the rest of your life. So don't be obsessed with having to do that thing that is going to be the final thing that you ever do now. Another thing that I wish somebody had told me over and over again is don't self-doubt. We tend, especially I think that women, we tend to be so much self-conscious, and we tend to doubt ourselves and always believe that unless you have it perfect, you shouldn't pursue that job, you shouldn't pursue that promotion, you shouldn't pursue that man if that's what you want to do. Don't think that you cannot do it. And finally, don't let your own insecurities get on the way, which goes back to the self-doubt portion too, right? Always believe that even if somebody told you before, so in a way is also don't listen to others, right? So many people have tried to put me down before and I let them. So don't let other people put you down, because they don't have the right to do that. You can control that. I also learned that there is so many things that you can control, but you can always control how you perceive them.
That is really good advice, because a lot of times, like you said, we push our own selves down, and that doubt creeps in. Am I doing the right thing? Can I really get this business off the ground? You have to trust yourself, right?
Oh yeah, I mean the whole business thing. I know, like how many times, you have no idea how many times I've given advice to people why don't you start your own business? Well, I don't have any clients. I don't know where to start. Well, you got to start in that, going incorporated, because right now incorporating a business in a country like the US, in most of states, it is really simple. And you don't have to have clients. You don't have to have revenue, but you do have to start that.
I love it. Now, I know a lot of times things all happen at the same time, and it actually feels like your whole life is falling apart. It sounds to me like your life was just falling into place. Things were going wrong, but this new you that has emerged has really just proved that things were falling into place and not really falling apart. Am I correct? Let's talk a
It
little bit about.
totally. It totally. And one of the things that I am loving right now to say, I'm proud to say that too, is that every time that I have not liked something in my life, that I have not liked the way that my life was going, I realized of one thing: I am the only one that has the power to change it. So the power of being able to change something, don't ever underestimate that. I am so fortunate. I know that women have a long way to go in many ways, but I'm also extremely fortunate that I was born, and I am now living in a country where, even though women may still be frowned upon and looked down, we have opportunities that so many other women don't have. And one of them is the opportunity to change something that you don't necessarily like how it is.
I love that. Yeah, we
And
do have
a bit.
total control. We have a little friend. We
He
have
agrees.
total control over where our lives can actually go, but we have to just believe in ourselves, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's also what everything lies, right? Like, you have to believe that you can do it. Otherwise, nobody else is going to believe it for you. You have to love yourself. Nobody will ever love you as much as you have the power to love yourself.
Okay, so now let's go on to this venture you went on, creating your own company and then meeting this company that was needing a female and you had all the right skills. Those are those little coincidences or synchronicities that happen when you put yourself out there, but you would not have found them unless you had put yourself out there. Am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Nobody will come and knock on the door and get you out of bed. You are the one that has to start knocking on doors. And at some point, that one door will be open. And I still believe that there is so many more doors that are waiting to be open for me. But you have to keep knocking. You have to have that power, that empowerment of knowing, well, obviously you're going to be knocking on a lot of wrong doors too. And you're going to go into places that maybe you shouldn't have, but always find a way to learn something from that experience too. There is very little things in my life that I fully regret because I didn't get to learn anything from.
Now, the point that you described when you hit rock bottom, when you realized you hadn't showered, you were in this deep, dark place. What helped you snap out of that state of sadness and depression, do you think?
Well, the smell was definitely pungent, but jokes aside, I came to the realization that I can do better, that I could do a lot better than that. That what was happening to me, because I was being completely underestimated at work. I was being given assignments that I was like, I this is crazy. I mean, this is ridiculous. This is something that somebody without even a high school degree can do. I have a doctorate. I don't want to, like, really sound like too snob, but I can definitely do better than this. And I'll tell you what, anybody can do better than the situation where they are when they feel that they are underestimated, because that is a sign that you could do different things. And I believe that that is really what made me snap. The fact that what I thought that was my all-time dream, which was being in corporate, and being, promoted and raised to the top and being recognized and all of that. As it turns out, I realized at some point that it wasn't for me. And this is why I keep telling people, don't ever think that what you're doing now is what you're going to be doing years from now, because you have the power to change, adapt, and do what ultimately makes you feel good with yourself. So that's what made me snap.
And it also sounds to me like you knew what your own self-worth was. You knew what you were worth as a woman, as a person, and that's what you focused on and that's what you went after, correct?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, like so many times we also have these story that is almost like crafted for us, right? And it may be crafted by your own self, right? Like you have those targets when you go to school, when you go to grad school, that is like, okay, well, so when I finish, I'm going to start in this company. I'm going to end up working for this amount of years and I'm going to get promoted to this position. And then this other company is going to be coming and sweeping me away because I am that good. Well, you know what? Life can be underwhelming sometimes, and we can't lose sight of the fact that things don't pan out the way you plan them, because there's so many factors that you are not accounting for in your plan. There is mostly external factors that there is that you cannot change, and at the end of the day, don't lose sight of what you want to be is good, is feeling good what you are doing, contributing for whatever reason and to whatever cause, or to even your own self-worth and education. But it doesn't, so the end doesn't have to mean that you have to have the steps that you believe that you created for yourself back when you were in your 20s, right? I see that even happening more with the new generations now, that they have everything so planned, that I want to tell them, honey, don't don't make yourself lose at this point. You're too young to become a loser, because things are not going to fall in places the way that you're planning them.
Yeah, sometimes we get so fixated on our plan, and when the plan doesn't go according to plan, you get really set back. So I think that's really good advice. So where
Yeah.
do you see yourself in the future? It
Not
sounds to
going
me like
back to
it's so
corporate.
much. So that's a definite no.
Well, sometimes, like seeing yourself in the future means what you absolutely don't want. I'll tell you one thing that I've always been pretty proud of. I never saw myself married with a lot of kids staying at home, which, I don't get me wrong, I don't I think it's wonderful if that is what your goal is, but it's never been my goal, and I never caved into that. So sometimes, like, the negative of where you see yourself, it actually can work. But now, going back to, I really, what I see myself is, I want to continue contributing to my country, the US. I have two nationalities, and this is one of them. And I absolutely love the work that I do for the Department of Defense because of that, because I feel that it really fills a purpose. And I never realized how purpose oriented I was. By the way, I always thought that the purpose was to become a certain title. And right now, I can't care any less about titles than I do. Now it is more about the purpose. And I want to continue doing the cosmetic chemistry work that I do, taking the Rejuvenative brand to where I believe it can get us, which is a nationwide and maybe even international brand that allows women and men to, empowers them to feel good about themselves. And the one thing that I keep telling people is, I want my products to be the gospel of, you are going to be proud to tell your age, because your skin, with proper care, can do a lot of great things for you. The first one, making you happy, And making you happy makes you pretty. And then we go back in circles, right? Because when you're pretty, you're happy. When you're happy, you're pretty. I do believe very strongly in that. So that is, and I want to continue also educating men and women on the proper care of the skin without having to resort to drastic measures like using needles and knives that eventually may bring results that are not only reversible, but less than what you expected, to put it nicely.
That is such good advice. Absolutely amazing advice. So we are eager to see you coming to speak in Washington, D.C. as one of our speakers for International Women's Month. Will you be running a workshop? What knowledge, what skills, what would your masterclass be about if you had that opportunity?
I would love to run a masterclass on proper care for the skin, which is key to maintain that healthy glow that can last for a lot of decades. You can be 40, you can be 50 and still have beautiful skin. You can have wrinkles and have beautiful skin. In fact, wrinkles, we have put that tag on them like they are the worst thing that can happen to a person, and actually they are not. Not only they can tell your story, but they are also your wrinkles. You can minimize them. You can actually make your skin look great at any age and be proper for your age. Nobody I know that is in their 40s or 50s want to be 20, because that is just what society is making us believe. No, we don't. In fact, the best time of my life as I know it is now. And I would love to have a master class and a workshop on how to properly take steps as part of your routine with the ultimate goal of being really proud of who you are, including telling your age.
I love that. I think that's really important for women not to be ashamed of our ages and
I
just
know.
owning the experience that comes and the wisdom that comes with age as well. That's why in the beginning of my
Exactly.
show, I asked women to say their age, because society has conditioned women to be fearful of telling the truth about how old you are. So thank you for being an advocate for that, because I'm very, very passionate about that as well.
Me
So thank you
too.
so
Let me
much.
tell you one more thing about that. I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily embarrassed, but I was one of those people that also always was not very happy to tell my age, and not because I was looking any better or worse than I do now, but because I didn't feel accomplished. I do now, and which is why I want to tell people that feeling that you have a purpose and feeling that you have accomplished is extremely important as part of being happy and in turn pretty.
I love it. I absolutely love it. Marta, thank you so much for coming online and sharing your wisdom with us today. I look forward to meeting you in person in March in Washington, D.C. for the Her Story Summit. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. I have Martha's details running at the bottom of the screen. In case you want to get hold of her, please contact her on her website, drmpactivate.com. Thank you, thank you, thank you again, Martha. I am looking forward to seeing you soon. And bye for now, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making her story.